You guys, here's your guys' lecture notes on vertical and horizontal asymptotes. Okay, so students will be able to find vertical and horizontal asymptotes of rational functions. So an asymptote, you guys, is an imaginary line that the graph does not cross most of the time. So if you guys look at the blue lines, right, notice that it looks like it, but this graph, you guys, it will never cross that dotted line. No matter how far you go to the right, it will not cross it, meaning it will not cross it like that. It just won't. Even if you guys go up on the graph, it will never cross this dotted line. No matter how much this goes up, it will never cross that dotted line. So those are asymptotes. This one is called the vertical asymptote. And this one, you guys, is called the horizontal asymptote. Okay, so we got a vertical one and a horizontal. So you graph those, and what we're doing today, you guys, is trying to find how we get those. Not graph them yet, we'll do that later, but how do we just find those? So here is the steps on how you find vertical asymptote. You set the denominator equal to 0, then solve for x. Vertical asymptote is described as x equals something. It is an equation. So first, you guys must know you need to factor everything. I'm talking about both the numerator and denominator. Factor out everything, see if anything cancels, and then set the denominator equal to 0. And again, you're going to write your answer as x is equals to something, because as you guys can see, the vertical asymptote is a vertical line, which you guys can describe as an equation. So let's do example 1. Everything is factored, so we don't need to change that. So we're going to set the denominators equals to 0. So what's our vertical asymptote? For this one, x will have to equals to -2. And for this one, you guys, x would have to equals to +3. So those are your two vertical asymptotes. It's what value of x would make this whole thing become 0 and this one, -2 and 3. So when we graph this, you guys, it will look something like this. So x equals -2. So that means it is a dotted line at x equals -2, and it's a dotted line at x equals 3. You're not expected to graph yet, but that's how, if you were to graph, that's what it would be. This one, factor out everything. There's only one thing I see we need to factor, which is the difference of squares factoring. 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 3. Both of these cancel, you guys. You just have 1 over 2x minus 3. So we factored, there was something we canceled, and then set the denominator equals to 0. Add the 3 over, and then divide by 2. X is equals to, add the 3, and then divide it by the 2. Now, if you guys need to set it up like this, where you guys actually solve for it out by showing the work, you guys are more than happy to do that. But hopefully you guys can just do it in your guys' head. Add the 3 over, opposite of -3 is add 3, and then divide it by 2, 3 halves. Example 3, factor out everything. X plus 5 times x plus 1, that's doing your guys' x method, right? And then we set the denominator equals to 0. So x will equal -5 for that one, and x will equal -1 for that one. And again, I should have done it for the other one too. If you guys are curious to what this looks like on a graph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what your guys' vertical asymptotes were to look like on a graph. At -1 and 5, and at 3 halves. 3 halves, you guys, is 1.5. Okay, So here are some dojos for you guys to try. So I suggest you pause the video, see how you do, and then play the video when you're ready. Okay, so the bottom, you guys, you can factor out a 3x to get x minus 2. You can factor out a 3x from both to get x minus 2. So what would make, and then you set the denominator equal to 0. So this one, in order to get 3x to be 0, you guys, x would have to equals to 0. In order for this factor to be a 0, x would have to equals to 2. And those two would be your guys' vertical asymptotes. For number 2, now we have to factor out everything. So x minus 6, use your guys' x method. Negative 6 and 2. So x minus 6 times x plus 2. These cancel, so you guys have 1 over x plus 2. Set the denominator, once everything's factored, set the denominator equals to 0. And x is going to equals to negative 2. That's your guys' vertical asymptote. So make sure you guys scale it from 1 to 5 on your guys' level of understanding. And now let's go to horizontal. So all of that, you guys, was to find out how we find our vertical asymptote. Now we're going to figure out how we find our horizontal asymptote. So to find that, we have 3 scenarios. We got the highest degree of the numerator. If it's greater than the highest degree of the denominator, this implies, you guys, the horizontal asymptote is none. If the highest degree of the numerator is equals to the highest degree of the denominator, this implies the horizontal asymptote is y is equals to the coefficients. And lastly, if the highest degree of the numerator is less than the highest degree of the denominator, this implies horizontal asymptote is y is equals to 0. So let's apply these 3 scenarios to here. What is the highest degree of the numerator? It's 3. What is the highest degree of the denominator? It's 2. So the numerator's degree is bigger than the denominator's degree, right? 3 is bigger than 2. And if we look at our scenarios, you guys, that reflects scenario number 1. Numerator is bigger than denominator, which means the horizontal asymptote is none. Example 6. So again, compare the highest degree of the numerator to the denominator. They are equals to each other, which means you guys look at your guys' coefficients. Look at your guys' coefficients. The coefficient of this degree is 2. And the coefficient of this degree, you guys, is 3. So y equals 2/3. And again, if you guys want to see what the graph of that looks like, well, here's 1. 2/3 is like 0.67, which is somewhere around there. And lastly, example 7. The highest degree of the numerator is 2. The highest degree of the denominator is 3. The numerator's degree is less than the denominator's, which means our horizontal asymptote will be y is equals to 0. But that is the expectation on how you guys find your horizontal asymptotes. Alright, so you guys try 3, 4, 5, see how you guys do, pause the video, and then once you guys are ready, we're going to go for it. Alright, number 3. Now notice, you guys, you don't do anything, right? You just keep the original function to find your horizontal asymptote. So this one, you guys, this one doesn't have a degree. So the top is degree of 0. And that makes sense because there's no variable, you guys. So the degree is 0. And your guys' degree on the bottom is 2. So definitely the numerator is less than the denominator, which means, you guys, this is case number 3. So the horizontal asymptote is y is equals to 0. For 4, now both of these, you guys, have degrees of 1. So the numerator is equal to the degree of the denominator. So that means you guys find your guys' coefficients. Y equals coefficient of this one over this one. 2 over 5. And lastly, number 5, you guys, the degree of the numerator is bigger than the degree of the denominator. So that means that the horizontal asymptote is y. It's none. Because the degree in the numerator is higher than the degree of the denominator. So make sure you guys do all this stuff, and hopefully this makes sense to you guys, which can propel you to do your guys' homework. Okay? Good luck, everyone. Peace.